What is up, guys? It is Sunday afternoon and that means it is podcast time. Today for Sunday, February 10th, 2019. As you might have noticed last week, I had to skip the podcast. I'm terribly sorry about that. Usually I try to keep the momentum going as much as possible. But last Sunday was Chinese New Year, so we had a bunch of people over at our place. We cooked basically the entire afternoon. We ate about 100 dumplings, I want to say. My stomach was so stuffed in the end, I could barely move up from the couch. So I'm really sorry that I had to skip it, but that's just the way it was. Now, moving on forward though, today I'm excited to cover a couple of different interesting topics that I came across this week and that I want to share with you guys. So first things first, I just finished this book, Flourish by Martin Seligman. I mentioned it before, it's basically his summary of the entire work that he has put into creating and pushing forward positive psychology. So this is the very last book that he wrote. He wrote a couple of books on this topic, and this is like the ultimate philosophy that he has created about well-being and life satisfaction of people in their lives. I gotta say, I'm not fully blown away by it. I think he has a couple of very interesting points, but then he really goes deep into different areas where he applied these different kind of philosophies, where he applied his methods of positive psychology. So it really covers basically the last 10 years of his work, which was a little bit too detailed for me as well as too practical for me. I would have enjoyed to actually learn about the theory behind it. I would have liked to learn more about the actual research that he has done, instead of learning about how they applied it to US military to battle PTSD, all these kind of very, very nuanced ways of applying it. It is definitely interesting, but it's not the right way to enter the topic if you don't know much about it. So I think I'm just gonna buy an earlier book that he has also written about happiness. I think it's called Authentic Happiness. So I'm gonna start out with that and then let you guys know if that is more up to my taste. Since I finished this one, of course, I'm gonna start a new book. And the one that I've chosen to read now is this one, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I have absolutely no idea what it's about, honestly. The only reason why I bought it is that it's consistently one of the most sold non-fiction books on Amazon. I think for 3 years in a row now it was like in the top 5 or top 10. It sounds like a very cliche kind of self-help rah-rah book. If you read it, you are a badass. How to stop doubting your greatness and start living an awesome life. Well, don't we all want that, right? But I'm gonna give it a fair shot, I don't know anything about the author, never heard of her, don't know anything about the book, didn't hear anything good or bad, for that matter. But I feel like, it's okay to give these kind of books a fair shot, and then if you don't like it for whatever reason, then you at least have an informed, you have made your decision based on actual information and by actually reading it. So stay tuned. Probably I'm gonna read it within a week. It seems like it's fairly easy to read, only has 250 pages, so should be through by the end of this week. And then I'm gonna give you guys an update on what my thoughts about it are. So this is it for my reading right now. I also have a Swedish book that I really, really have to finish. I've been reading it for like 3 months, but I'm just not getting around to it because I only read it on the weekends, and then on the weekends I have other things going on. So I hope that I finish that one soon and that I can move on to another fiction book, hopefully also in Swedish, just to improve my Swedish further. Another thing that right now I'm up to is finding a new gym. Not because I don't like the old one that I had, but simply because the membership ran out, and I always feel like that's a great opportunity to look into other options, look into maybe other opportunities. Also, since I just started working at a new place now, I feel like maybe I can find a gym that is close to work, so I can just immediately get out of the office and get into my gym clothes, work out for like an hour, and then go home. Not sure exactly if that's how it's gonna work out, because I actually also really got used to going to the gym right before I go to sleep. And for that, it would be super convenient to have a gym close to my new home, where I'm gonna move in like 2 weeks. But yeah, because of that, I haven't really worked out this much this week. I have gone twice to the gym, and then the membership ran out, so I didn't go last Saturday, or this Saturday rather, yesterday, which I already feel a bit sorry about. I feel like I miss it already. Honestly, I also just mostly miss the sauna. Love sauna in the winter. I mean, there's nothing better, I think. You just go there and you relax, and it's so calming, and you're sweating your ass off, but at the same time it feels so good. Also, when you take a cold shower afterwards and then you head home and you go straight to bed, such a good feeling, and I really miss that already. So I need to make sure that whichever gym I choose now for myself for the next year, it has to have a sauna, and it has to be a good one, and it has to be the one that like actually produces steam and not just this kind of like, I think there's some with infrared light or something, the kind of dry sauna. Don't really like that. I want to really have the steam going. I want to get it up to like 100 degrees and then suffer for like 20 minutes in there before I go out and I enjoy myself, and I can see myself turning completely red and like just having like the after sweat. Even after I arrive home, I usually like brush my teeth and I'm still sweating. It's like still pouring down because it's so hot still. Like my body's still so heated up. But yes, that's a little bit sad that I haven't been working out that much. On the flip side though, I have continued doing burpees basically every second day, which has been a great exercise. Really enjoy doing the burpees because I can feel myself not being in the best shape when it comes to that. I can see myself really struggling with it. And it's so frustrating and at the same time so motivating to just put extra effort into this then and make sure that I'm really getting better at this. So entire February I'm also gonna do burpees, and then probably gonna continue indefinitely just because I'm so bad at it right now. Just quickly need to check the microphone here. Yes, it is recording, it is working, so it doesn't happen to me again that the microphone is just not turned on. So that is it basically for my mental stimulation and physical stimulation. Another thing that I just wanted to bring up here on the podcast because I thought it was a really interesting question. One of my buddies recently asked me about, not really advice, but just on my opinion based on like personal development and what I'm really into, these kind of life questions. He was asking, what do you think about the fact that you can never become really, really good at something, like a true master of your craft, without sacrificing other areas of your life? And I thought that was a really fascinating question for a couple of reasons. The first one being, of course, that this is a question I have thought a lot about, and a question that I'm bouncing back and forth in my head for my own life as well. So it was highly relevant for myself and for him, as a matter of fact. So we started writing about this topic back and forth, comparing notes, so to say. And here's basically what I said. First of all, it takes so much time to become truly, truly great at something. Like, probably you guys have heard about the 10,000 hour rule. It's something that I have brought up continuously on this channel. It is something that was publicized by Malcolm Gladwell, an American author who wrote a book called Outliers, where he discusses outliers and prodigies, people who are outstandingly good at what they do or did. So, for example, the Beatles, Bill Gates, I think he covered Tiger Woods as well. So he discusses all these prodigies, and what he says is that mastery to that extent basically boils down to 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. So what that means is that you have to practice for 10,000 hours on your craft, but you don't only practice, but you actually do deliberate practice, which means that you do something in your practice, during your practice, that you are not comfortable doing yet. Something that you have not yet mastered. So, as an example, if you are a violin player, it doesn't count as deliberate practice if you are 4 years into your routine of practicing and then you just play something very quick that you learned in the first week of learning the violin. That is not deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is really constantly pushing your boundaries, pushing your skills, making sure you reach the next level, and doing that for 10,000 hours is what actually is needed to reach mastery. This goes back, this is not something that Malcolm Gladwell came up himself, but this is something that goes back to a guy called Anders Ericsson, a Swede who also wrote a book later on called Peak, which I haven't read yet, but which I definitely want to check out because he's like the father of this 10,000 hour rule. And he actually did research, I think it was with violin players or some kind of musicians, and he figured out that it's really not that much about talent, but it's really about honing your skills and making sure that you put in the time to become the great person that you aspire to be. Now, with that in mind, it is basically true that it is almost impossible to reach mastery if you have other things going on in your life. Like if you have a family already, or if you have friends that you like to hang out with on the weekends, if you have other hobbies than your actual profession, if you like to do sports a lot, if you like to read, but read about things that are not related to your skill that you try to achieve mastery in. All of these things are basically a waste of time for your path of mastery, right? So that being said, I think it is basically impossible to become a truly great one without sacrificing almost everything else in your life. And on top of that, you do have people who are just very, I don't want to say talented, because people like to think that it's not about talent, it's about skill, and I tend to believe in that as well. But since my buddy that I was talking about that topic with, since he's working in academia, he said there's really people who are just born smarter. Like they're more talented for doing highly intellectual and academic work. So if you want to beat those people, you have to work even harder because they already have an advantage. They are already ahead of you, and if you want to beat them, you have to make sure that you work even harder than those people who are already working very hard themselves. So this makes it even harder to like outwork them, so to say. What I in the end suggested was to not go for mastery, but at the same time not just be average, because that was like the jumping off point of the discussion. Do you really want to die as someone who didn't accomplish anything great, who didn't leave any legacy behind, so to say, at least not in terms of mastery and the skills that you possessed? But do you really want to just die as a random dude who lived a random life, did a random 9-to-5 job, raised his family and his 2.3 kids, and then, you know, random salary, very average everything, and then you die as one of 7 billion people, not making a major impact. If that's not what you want, but at the same time you can't reach true mastery either because you have other shit going on in your life, I think the best way to go about it is to make sure that you find a job or a profession where you are constantly being challenged. The best way to do that, of course, is being self-employed and then taking it upon yourself to hold yourself accountable, to constantly hone your skills and push yourself and try to become better at what you do. But there are other ways as well to do that if you are employed. So make sure that you find this kind of profession where you constantly improve yourself, you constantly push yourself, because with that, it can actually be enough to have a normal 8-hour working day, 40-hour work week. You know, you still have enough time to do other shit and have a normal family life, have a circle of friends, hang out with them, go travel, all these kind of things that we normal people like to do. You can still do that with your 40 to 50-hour work week, but then you're not wasting the time that you're actually working. Because what does work actually look like for a lot of people out there? A lot of people don't do deliberate practice while they're working. A lot of people do the same shit that they learned years ago over and over and over again without actually being challenged, without actually growing, without actually forcing themselves out of their comfort zone. Also because their company doesn't want them to be out of their comfort zone, right? Their company wants them to do the stuff that they're already good at, and they don't need to have them get better at something because for the other jobs they can hire other people who are good at that. So companies in general are not interested in deliberate practice. They are not interested in you reaching a flow state. They are not interested in you getting considerably better once you have reached a certain level of proficiency that allows you to do the job that you are getting paid to do. I think that is actually the main reason why people don't reach mastery. It's not that they don't have enough time to work on their skills and hone them, but it's rather that they waste the time that they have. And not in the sense that they have all these hobbies and shit going on, but that they actually don't make the most out of their working hours. They're not pushing themselves. They're not being tough enough on themselves to say, hey, this is something that you already know to do, so do something else, for fuck's sake. Challenge yourself. Do something that you are not able to do yet, something that you're not yet capable of. So this would be my advice for anyone out there who wants to reach mastery and who wants to become truly great at their field. I don't think you can become the greatest because there are always people who are willing to sacrifice all these other things in their lives. There are always people who are willing to work 16 hours every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year on that one skill, like non-stop. There are these people and they are crazy and they're obsessed and probably they're a little bit autistic or something to be wired like that, because that's not normal, I think. At least I don't consider it very normal to not care about anything else in life but this one skill that you try to become absolutely the greatest of all times at. There are these people, so you won't be the greatest probably if you have this kind of more laid back attitude, but you can become very, very good at something. You can become outstandingly good at something that way. Maybe it also takes a little bit longer, but you can do it probably within like 10 to 20 years within your career. And that's, to me at least, good enough. That should be good enough for most people. I mean, that's enough to make a very decent living. That's enough to become some kind of expert in your field, be considered a source of information and a source of authority in that particular field. You could, do like media appearances and write books about it if you're into that kind of stuff. You could start a YouTube channel about the topic that you're interested. You can start a podcast. You are totally capable of achieving that in 10 to 20 years when you work only 40 hours per week, if you are willing to push yourself and if you're not settling for just doing routine work over and over again. Also, I believe that this is actually the best way to incorporate mastery and your own career into a broader concept of life satisfaction and well-being and happiness. Because like friendships and social interactions and traveling and hobbies, all of these things are sources of happiness, sources of life satisfaction to most people, let's say. So if you're giving all of that up, you might become the greatest of all times in one particular very, very narrow field, but you're definitely not the happiest because you sacrificed everything else for that greater good. So if you're trying to maximize your life satisfaction, then this is actually not the best way to go about it. I think the best way is something close to what we currently have in the working field, which is like 40 to 50 hours of work and then having enough free time to do other stuff. Because the more time you put into honing and developing your professional skill set, this very, very narrow skill set that you try to develop and become the greatest at, the more time you put into that, the less you become out of the time that you put into in terms of happiness. Like there's definitely some diminishing returns there, and it would be much more beneficial to put those extra 5 hours that you have in the day after working hours, to put those into working out and doing sports and making sure that you care about your loved ones and that you catch up with your family and your friends. All of that will have much higher returns in terms of happiness. So I am trying to optimize my life for well-being and for happiness, and I think this is the actually right way to go about it. Okay, this was kind of a rant here, but those are my thoughts about mastery and incorporating mastery into a life that is considered well-lived in terms of life satisfaction, well-being, and happiness. I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. And actually later this week I will publish a video about a very specific model that this guy, Martin Seligman, that he came up with to make sure that you optimize for all the right components that maximize your life satisfaction and that are representative for people who have a very high life satisfaction and are very high in terms of well-being and happiness. So I'm going to publish that later this week. I already recorded it. I recorded it, in fact, before this video, but I still have to edit it, and now it's like almost 7 p.m. on a Sunday. I'm going to cook soon, hang out with my girlfriend a little bit more, so I don't think I will have time to edit it today, but it's coming during the upcoming week. That being said, no need to prolong this podcast unnecessarily. I felt like I got out what I wanted to say. I shared what I wanted to share with you guys and what I had on mind. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you have a fantastic new week. Wish you all the best and looking forward to catch up with you guys very soon. Until then, talk to you next time.